When our family first moved to Plano, Texas, I noticed at the church we joined plans for an adult Bible study called Charisma. That sounded interesting to me, so I signed up for the class. 12 of us met in the church library Wednesday evenings with our facilitator, our associate pastor. One evening at the end of the class, I packed up my books just like usual and headed out the door, only to find our facilitator standing right outside in the hallway. She looked me right in the eye and said, "Have you ever considered seminary?" What did she see in me to make her ask such a question? Had she noticed I was familiar with much of the material we were studying? Did she see a latent desire in me? I stood there surprised, and not knowing what to say. I had thought about seminary. I looked into it at one point, but with the move, somehow I thought, oh, I had missed it. It was too late. What I did was, I said, our son is in seminary. He too thinks I should take a course. He sees I would enjoy that level of learning. He recognizes my longing for more. He even wrote a note in Greek to whet my appetite. But I put him off. We said a few more things and then we went on our way. As days went by, I continued to think about her words. Have you ever considered seminary? I was beginning to admit, at least to myself, I was frustrated, picking up another commentary, going through the Bible one more time. I needed something more. I was hoping this new class would be enough. I have wondered if our associate pastor facilitator of the Charisma class and or our son had failed to speak to me about seminary, would I have ever attended? Without their voicing their recognition of what they noticed in me, would I have continued to dismiss what I have noticed in myself? Would I have acknowledged the recognition of what God was doing in my life? In Luke chapter 19, we read the story about Zacchaeus. When Jesus enters Jericho, there is a man, a tax collector, a rich man, Zacchaeus, who was trying to see Jesus. But because he was so short, he couldn't see over the crowd. So picture this. Zacchaeus, well known in the community, running down the street in his three-piece suit, shirt and tie, climbing up on a lamppost so he can see the dignitary that is passing through town. In this case, it's a sycamore tree. Jesus was a great observer of people. He noticed how interested and curious Zacchaeus was that day. Jesus noticed Zacchaeus was so eager to see him, he allowed himself to suffer undignified behavior for such a one as himself, a community leader. Sensing what resided deep within Zacchaeus, Jesus said something. Zacchaeus, hurry and come down. I must stay at your house today. I can still hear that song we sang in Sunday school. Zacchaeus was a wee little man was he. He climbed up in a sycamore tree for the Lord he wanted to see. And the kids in my class added motions. They looked up at the ceiling and they waved at Zacchaeus. And then they called, Zacchaeus, come down. We're coming to your house today. And Zacchaeus did come down. He was so happy to welcome Jesus to his home. The people could not believe it. Zacchaeus, of all people, a man of notoriety, who held the reputation of cheating people, who extorted unwarranted taxes, who made himself rich in the process. Townspeople were incensed. Not only that Jesus would speak to Zacchaeus, but go and be a guest in his home. There's much to learn from this story, and teachers and scholars over the centuries have shared their insights. But what stands out for me is the fact that Jesus took notice of Zacchaeus and engaged in conversation. And the encounter had striking impact that changed the character of his life. We hear the change in what Zacchaeus had to say after his conversation. He stands and declares, "I will give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I have defrauded anyone, I will pay back 4 times as much." Jesus took a moment to say something, and that made all the difference. In Exodus 3, Moses was busily engaged in his vocation of caring for the sheep when something catches his attention. He looked over and noticed what was looking like a bush burning, but it didn't burn up. That sight in that particular moment, for whatever reason, made Moses curious. It grabbed his attention. It caused him enough to go over and take a closer look. And that encounter made all the difference. The experience encouraged Moses to alter the trajectory of his life after some hesitation. But Moses was motivated to help his fellow Israelites suffering in Egypt. Eventually, Moses noticed Joshua, a wise young man who showed up in his life, encouraged him to prepare to become the next leader of the Israelites. Moses and my associate pastor and Jesus recognized the need for encouragement. They were alert to moments of opportunity to say something, moments of influence that have power to motivate. We need encouragement. Caleb Davis, founding and lead pastor of the True Life Church in Arvada, Colorado, understands the need for encouragement when he says, and I quote him, "Without encouragement, we will be lacking in love and faithfulness." That is a powerful statement. Without encouragement, we will be lacking in love and faithfulness. Encouragement is that necessary. Encouragement comes in many forms: sermons, books, movies, and so forth. And with the words we speak to one another. Pastor Davis identified encouraging words in the New Testament. The Apostle Paul, for instance, in 1 Thessalonians, encouraged the church in Thessalonica how he saw them growing and changing in their faith. Listen. "For the word of the Lord has sounded forth from you, not only in Macedonia and Achaia, but in every place. Your faith in God has become known, and how you turn to God from idols to serve a living and true God." And then in Thessalonians 4, Paul affirms and encouraged their godly character. He says, "You do love all the brothers and sisters, but we urge you, beloved, to do more and more." And then in Romans chapter 16, he says, he publicly recognizes a contribution that a deacon made. Listen. "She has been a benefactor of many and of myself as well." All words meant to encourage people, just like us, trying to live lives of faithfulness in a broken and imperfect world. Whether we know it or not, we influence others. We all have a sphere of influence. People show up in our lives. People show up in your life. People show up in mine. People with whom we take notice. Occasions when we take notice of something in a person that is ripe for a question or for a statement. An opportune moment to say something. My husband and I are intentional walkers. We walk the same route every morning. One morning, as we were walking, a car pulled up alongside of us. The driver rolled down her window and leaned at us and said, "I have been watching you for 12 years. I just want to tell you how much I admire you and how inspiring you have been." And that was about 5 or 6 years ago. That comment still energizes me today. We may hesitate to say something. We think maybe it is none of our business. Or we may be too embarrassed or afraid of looking foolish or even suffer outright rejection. Can we risk it? We may have to swallow some of our fear, but it's worth it. The stakes are too high. We may not influence others the way Jesus did or Moses did, but we have moments. Let's be alert to notice them and courage enough to speak. Let's roll down our metaphorical windows and say something. Let's be encouragers. Amen? Amen.